Today on the Uncomfortable Podcast, we have Soren von Varchmin, who is the head organizer of NamesCon, CloudFest, and MSP Global. CloudFest is his biggest conference with over 8,000 attendees, but myself, NamesCon has been a conference I have been going to for at least 10 years. Soren tells us his story, his entrepreneurial background, his dedication to charity, and what it was like being in the conference business during the pandemic. NamesCon holds a special place in my heart, and I told a friend that even if I wasn't in the domain business any longer, I would probably pop in to see some old friends. And being an OG of NamesCon, I decided to ask Soren some hard questions about NamesCon, air some gripes, talk about the speaker lineup, and much more. If you want to buy tickets to NamesCon, go to namescon.com. Use the promo code ComfortZone or click on the link in the description for a 10% discount off the advertised price. And I will give you a limited edition Saw.com t-shirt, the very same one that I wore in this episode. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to see you in Austin. So today we have Mr. NamesCon, CloudFest, Soren von Varchmin. How are you doing today?
That was a good one. Thanks. And thank you for having me at your podcast today, Jeff.
Yeah, no problem. And we were talking before we started recording. Your last name, it goes back thousands of years.
Yes.
Is it a royal last name? Are you a count?
Actually, my ancestors, they were knights. And they were touring what is now northeast Poland. And so the history really goes back, and it's basically only my family who carry that name. There's a lot of Varchmins, but there's only our family carrying the name von Varchmin. And the story is basically there was a castle, but this doesn't exist anymore. So my grandfather kind of lost that castle during the First World War, and the castle itself then got destroyed during the communist era in Soviet Union. So the place is still there. I was lucky to see it 6 or 7 years ago when I was driving to Kaliningrad in Russia. So I drove through and I was able to see the estate. But I said, the castle unfortunately don't exist anymore. So, but obviously I have von Varchmin, the domain in all different TLDs to keep it alive.
Do you have, hearing that you have family members going back as a knight and they had a castle, do you have any artifacts or things that have been passed down through the family?
Unfortunately,
from generation to generation?
No, everything got lost along the way.
That's wild. Yeah, I mean, our family came from Italy, and when they moved to the United States, they pretty much had the shoes on their feet and the clothes on their back and left everything else there. So there really isn't much from the old country in our family either, except for our culture.
Yeah.
And that's really all we have.
Yeah, we keep the culture. I even keep the name, but both of us, we still have to work.
Yeah, unfortunately, right? So, you're definitely an interesting guy to me because, I mean, some of us know the history of NamesCon that was started by Richard Lau, and then it was sold to GoDaddy, and then you kind of appeared on the scene. But getting up to that point and getting into the conference business, because you also run 2 other conferences, right? It's RDS and CloudFest. How did you get into this? What's your story to get here? Maybe not going back to when Grandpa was a knight, but what got you into this business?
Yeah. I stopped going to school quite early when I was 16 already. So I don't have a high school diploma, but in Europe, especially in Germany, we have a thing called apprenticeship, which is like a government controlled, or it's basically a framework where in 2.5 or 3 years, you get an education in a certain subject. And so it's 50% work in a company and 50% university. And I did that at Fraport, at the Frankfurt Airport Authority. So basically my profession is I learned how to manage an airport. That
Oh,
was
wow.
basically what I learned. I was quite young when I finished my apprenticeship. I was only 18. And so I was too young to start working for a large corporation, and I wanted to see the world. That's why I worked for Fraport in the first way during my apprenticeship. So I started my own business, and my own business was a tour operator. So Air Seychelles back then had a weekly flight starting in 93 or 94, like every Friday from Frankfurt to Seychelles. And there were not enough tour operators at that time to fill the aircraft. So that was the sweet spot. So yeah, it was a very good time, and I concentrated back then on weddings or honeymoons, as well as different kind of TV productions or photo productions in Seychelles. So that was before the internet era, or during the time where internet became more popular. So I remember, like in the first days, I was sending faxes back and forth with my colleagues in the Seychelles, which was quite expensive, like $2 or $3 per fax. And if that was a mistake,
Oh, yeah, it'd be long distance.
yeah. So
Yeah, it'd be a long distance call. Yeah, and then it would take like 10 or 20 minutes to fax the documents. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry to
exactly,
interrupt you. Keep
exactly.
going.
So in '94, I got my first email address. I think in 95, 96, I registered my first domains. A lot of generic domains, but back then with network solutions, like super expensive, $70, $80 per domain. But I also registered basically the domain in 98, I think it was, gondwanatours.com, which was the name of my business. So it was one of the
Okay.
first live websites, basically, where tour operators were presenting their offers. I sold the business in 2000, and this is when by complete instant, my story in this web hosting and domain industry got started. So I'm 24 years now in this hosting and domain industry. We had this small control panel in Germany, this small startup called Confix, completely grassroots. And our first company back then who used that control, it's similar to what is now cPanel and Plesk. Basically, Confix
Okay.
became Plesk, or ended up in Plesk. And now it's this company called WebPros, which owns both control panels. And yeah, so that was the start of a ride, I would say. We sold the company in 2002 or 2003 to Parallels, which was a big.
When you said we, how many people were there?
We were around back then in 2003, like maybe 100, 150 employees.
Oh, many
Maybe
that
15
many.
to
Wow.
20
Okay.
shareholders, mostly the employees back then, before VC and PE money came in later at later stages. Yeah, and basically my job was to build out the European and Asian operations. So in mid 2000s, I moved to Tokyo and to Singapore, lived there a couple of years to open the Parallels offices, China, Tokyo, yeah, Singapore, a couple of other countries. And then after that, I worked for venture capital as entrepreneur in residence. That was really interesting to see the other side of a business. And my job specifically was to help companies who have some kind of ecosystem interest in the domain or web hosting or cloud service provider stage to enter that market and to kickstart and help them to know the ecosystem and the players. And then shortly thereafter, I was basically working for CloudFest. Yeah, so CloudFest exists since 20 years. There was no CEO for 10 years, for the first 10 years. The company CloudFest, before NamesCon, before MSP Global, in 2014, 10 years ago when I started, was, I think, less than $2 million in revenue. So it was like good enough as a business, um, to keep it going, but someone had to put concentration on it. It was started by Thomas Stroh, who's very famous in this web hosting space with his companies which he founded. Um, and he did it as a hobby, so he needed to make a decision: do we really do this now, or do we stop that? So, and
Yeah.
from 2014 to now, I'm basically working with CloudFest. 6 years ago, we took over NamesCon. We were always owned by some kind of hosting company or cloud service provider. In the beginning, it was Interginia. It was a very big hosting company, holding company in Germany. Interginia got acquired by Host Europe. Host Europe got acquired by GoDaddy. That's how we ended up in GoDaddy for a couple of years. And during the pandemic, we, now say, including me, a couple of shareholders were able to buy out the business from GoDaddy again. And here we are, bigger and better than ever, and became really strong back after COVID.
Got it. All right. So I got a couple of questions here. So you were working at the at Runa Capital, and then that company had investments, and it owned a piece of the company that owned CloudFest, right? And your job
Uh,
was to go and find.
no,
Go ahead.
that is unrelated. That is completely unrelated. Runa Capital
Unrelated.
was before, but we have a couple of, or Runa Capital has a couple of investments which are quite famous in our ecosystem. So
Okay.
maybe you heard about Nginx, the web server. It's the most used web server in the world. When MariaDB, the database, which is the successor to MySQL, when we had a very good investment, Equid, which got sold for 500 million. It was with e-commerce widgets, which you can integrate in any kind of WordPress or any kind of website. It was also integrated with a lot of site builders. Like, for example, if you go to Wix.com, so some of the e-commerce parts are basically based on Equid. And then we had another successful company in that space, which I helped in the beginning, called Gelastic, which was platform as a service. And we sold it to Virtuoso. Yeah, so more like deep tech rather than, let's say, service providers. Like, my experience is always like on the vendor side. Like, I never really worked on the service provider side of things for a registrar, registry, or cloud service provider.
Yep.
Like, my
Mhm.
knowledge is always on the vendor side, like how to sell to that audience, to that ecosystem. And I think that's like really, really helpful for CloudFest and NamesCon as an organizer, to understand like the vendors, the partners, the sponsors who put the money in at the end for that conference, to understand what they need and who do they need to sell to, how do they address that, and so on.
That's great. I love that. So my company, let me understand this. So when you said you've owned CloudFest and NamesCon for 6 years, or you've owned CloudFest for 10 years and NamesCon for 6, what was it? What that you said?
The latter. So CloudFest is this year 20 years old. I'm working there since 10
Yeah, but you've
years.
owned it for 10. Yep.
Yeah, and we acquired NamesCon, I think, 6 years ago, 6 or 7.
Okay. Okay. So similar to myself, I left Uniregistry. I actually remember when you came in the office in England to Uniregistry, and you're talking to Frank when he was buying like all of your. You must have loved him that year when he bought like all of the sponsorships and did the club and like everything. He really did it up. But I remember I launched my business in 2019, right in the fall of 2019, saw.com, and business was getting going, and then it was like mid-March. I remember them canceling it's called March Madness, the college basketball tournament in the United States. They canceled it. That would only happen if the world crashed into the sun. It's that big of a deal. It's like canceling Carnival and or Oktoberfest, in Germany. Like, it's just not something that's even a discussion. They canceled it. I was like, holy shit, this isn't going to be good. And I'd say less than a week later, my pipeline of deals, and I had people working for me, evaporated. The business just fell on its face for a number of months. And then it took some serious hard work and dedication just to get a pulse and then get the business going again. So I can't imagine being in the trade show business. And I'm sure you owed GoDaddy some money from purchasing the show from them, right? So they probably had expectations as to monthly, quarterly, yearly payments or a percentage of the revenue or guarantees. And the world isn't even going in the same room as each other, let alone flying across the world to meet in places. So what the hell was that like, watching everything you worked so hard for kind of fall apart and trying to rethink it? What was that like for you?
Yes, I mean, it was a really tough time. We had NamesCon in the last week of January in
I was
2020.
at
You
it
know,
and
it was,
everyone was worried. Yeah, everybody was afraid.
yes, everyone was
And yeah,
worried, and
everyone's
already a
concerned about
couple of people didn't come. Our Chinese friends didn't come, and some others
it.
worried about that. I came back totally sick. That was before the testing, so I don't know, but I was sick for 2 weeks. And yeah, then we had
I usually
CloudFest
get
in
sick
front
from
of
NamesCon. What did you say?
us.
I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah, what, CloudFest after
I
that?
got so sick. I think I got it maybe quite early. I think before everything got official. But anyway, we had our big CloudFest conference in front of us, and I was already feeling the whole of February. This something is going wrong. Something is going really, really wrong. Until there was the official announcement in mid-March, and CloudFest was like I think in the third week of March, that was the first one we had to cancel. But we were owned by GoDaddy, and we were treating everything very respectfully. So all our partners, they got who already paid, they got their money back. We canceled everything. We found solutions with some of our vendors or with most of our vendors. But yeah, I mean, we have to pay a couple of employees. We are rather a small company with 15 full-time employees right now, and also back then. But I mean, yeah, they need to get paid as well. So the virtual events didn't cover that. I mean, I think we did them okay. We also got some money in from sponsors, but I mean, a virtual event is like nothing like a physical event, especially for the team to organize. So it was really hard, to motivate and get through this time. But also at that time, it was a good decision to talk to GoDaddy. I was not part of his talks because I was actively involved in the business. So, but it was a good time to talk to GoDaddy because we never really fit into GoDaddy. We were just passed along, with a couple of acquisitions. So we ended up with GoDaddy, but it was difficult for GoDaddy as well because, like, small little things. For example, if you buy some painkillers, for a speaker, for the green room because he has a headache and he needs it before going to stage. Like, how do you put this into the accounting system? It's like it's impossible. So with all the friendship and how we try to deal doing workarounds and things like that, it was slowing us down. We were always a little bit in the whole mood. But on the other side, I mean, if this pandemic thing wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't be able, to buy out the company and operate it as an independent event organizer.
Yeah. I mean, look, in the end, GoDaddy is not an event organizing company, right? And I'm sure
Right.
they went through some serious challenges like any other company, mobilizing their workforce home during that time. And I'm sure they didn't want to be bothered by you. They were worried about
Exactly.
how the hell we're going to get 10,000 customer service agents out of the offices and into their homes so they can keep working and we can stay open. And somehow we continue offering our 24-hour around the clock worldwide customer service without any interruption, right? I mean, that to me was impressive on many levels, not just at GoDaddy, but every major company, to move, their service people and workers and everybody home. I mean, for you though, like for me, I had a situation where, and you just said you had 15 employees, right? And whether GoDaddy was paying the salaries or not, if the money isn't coming in and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better anytime soon, you start thinking the worst, right? And so for me, when I left and started saw.com, I had others that I worked with who had good paying jobs at Uniregistry and other places that joined us. And there was no money coming in. And I remember saying to them, like, look, nobody's buying right now, but there will come a day when they start buying again. You just got to give people a chance to figure their lives out and let these businesses figure themselves out. And once they do, we need to be first in line for who they send the money to. And we need to work our asses off. So when that day comes, we're first in line at 100 companies, not one. And you need to stick with it. And it was tough saying that to them for half of March, all of April, all of May, and then half of June, right? And it's like, for you, you do your first virtual conference. And I'm sure you, even though you sat on your ass organizing it, you were probably twice as tired after that than you were. And you didn't make much money at all, and you're writing checks to do it. And the stress, like, how did you manage it all? Like, what did you do? And what were the kind of the darker hours? Because when I was telling people you got to stick with it, I didn't really even believe myself when I was saying this stuff. It looked fucking bleak to me on my side. So what was it for you?
It was really, really difficult. Like, I also had some personal problems at that time. So if I look back at that time, it's a little bit blurred, But I have a very strong survival mode, and I think that is kind of what kicked in, to, okay, we have to do something, and also if you yourself you're feeling down, you have to motivate other people, that as well. But to be honest, to motivate other people helps to motivate myself as well. And back then, what I did is, like, with my friends, like Tom Stroh and Jochen Berger, who basically started CloudFest 20 years ago, and they own a couple of hosting companies now, like Contabo, Hostinger, and a couple of other ones. Back then, like Jochen, he was always like doing his grassroots thing, but he was building schools in India because his wife is originally from India. And back then there was the decision, okay, let's make that a little bit more professional, and let's not build 2 or 3 schools per year. Let's do this as a real foundation. We set up everything, we hire some people, to manage it. And we built 60 schools per year, or 30 schools per year. Yeah, I think that's more realistic, 30 schools per year. And that kind of started during this process, or during that time, in mid 2020. So I got very involved, and I would call it a hobby. I'm a little bit of a fundraiser. But it's very nice to see, I mean, obviously from a CloudFest audience and ecosystem, we have some of the large players, who donated over the past. GoDaddy has 2 or 3 schools, for example. But there's also a couple of domain investors and brokers. Whenever they make a big deal, like a 7-digit deal, I know, okay, I can expect a check right now for one of our schools coming in. So we have our 5-6 domainers and brokers in our ecosystem here, which are supporting that as well. And I mean, I still love doing that. It's one of my favorite things, and that helped me to keep sane during that period specifically.
When we're done with the podcast, email me the details on that, and I'll put it on this episode and let others know about it. Okay. Yeah, that would kept your sanity. I think watching Tiger King with my wife and drinking a lot of wine kind of kept me held together. And I think we all kind of had some some mental and personal issues during that time. So you said earlier, so after COVID was over and you put together your first one back in Austin.
Exactly.
How did that one go, and how has the conference business been since for you?
The good thing was, or still is, that the marketing budgets, at least what we experience, seem to be more open and bigger than before COVID. So,
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of the large corporations, they're happy to be back, happy to do physical conferences again, happy to meet people in person and customers and so on. So I would say, especially in 2022, like there was more budgets available than I can think of any year before COVID. So that was really helpful, and it came naturally. I mean, everyone wanted to spend money again on conferences, haven't spent anything in 2 years. And then what was a real good decision is that we added CloudFest USA, our little outlet, let's call, to NamesCon. There might be some overlap, but it's maybe less overlap than you think, but it's at least complementary from the subjects we are covering. But what is important to understand is when you organize a conference, you always have a bottom cost, so you can't change that, so the economy of scale comes only if you scale it in number of people or number of exhibitors, because the base cost is always the same, everywhere. Mm-hmm. And having two conferences in one venue is a big advantage for us, to put more money into the production and the quality of the event.
So you were, I didn't know this. I had no idea. I didn't really even know what CloudFest was until you combined it with NamesCon. And those who are in the domain business, can you explain, look at balloons. Can you explain to everybody what CloudFest is in Germany? Because it's a massive conference. And Rob, who works for me, went there this year to sell hosting.com, and he met a lot of great contacts there, and hopefully we can get it sold to one of them because of going to that conference. And he sent me a video of you guys doing like the server toss, and there seemed to be a massive party, and there's thousands and thousands of guests. I never realized it was that big. So can you tell us a little bit about that, and then we can get into more of the NamesCon and that. So that conference is held in March, right? And you've been doing that it's at a theme park in Germany, right? So I'll let you explain it. You can go from there.
Yes. So think Disneyland. It's called Europa Park. It's the largest theme park in Europe. It's larger actually than Disneyland Paris. We have the complete theme park. The theme park is closed to public. So we have a complete theme park, including all surrounding hotels in a circle of 20 miles around the theme park, and as well as the Europa Park hotels themselves, completely blocked for our audience. So we have around 8,700 visitors we had in this March, attendees, 200 exhibitors, and the attendees come from more than 90 countries. We are quite proud of that. So you can think about that. The market we address, well, our main market are the cloud service providers. The companies such as DigitalOcean, Vultra, GoDaddy, A2 Hosting, DreamHost, Yonos, Hostinger, Web Central, just to name a few, who are selling email, domain, shared hosting, dedicated hosting, website builder, those kind of services. Yeah. And you can think about it this way. We have basically the product managers and executives from the market leaders in each country, from the GoDaddies in each of the countries, like a Loca Web from Brazil, where would come to Germany, or Latin Cloud from Argentina, or Ruma Web from Indonesia. They are the clear market leaders in their certain segment, and they come there basically to meet the exhibitors, their partners. So the interesting thing is it's a theme park. And we are doing that now for, I think, 12 or 13 years already in Europa Park. And we grow together with them that specific conference. And also for the owner family, it's still like the highlight of the year, because it's the only time when there's no kids in the theme park. It's only drunken adults all over. And I mean, you can get very playful and creative. So this year we launched, we did the World Championships in server throwing. So you basically you get a real 19 rack server, and when there's some videos online. I mean, you can watch it. It's quite funny.
So who is the person who will go down in history that won it? What's his name or her name? Do you know the world champion server thrower?
I have to look it up, but
oh no, you forgot.
Yeah. I forgot, but I have to look it up. Sorry.
You should have a company sponsor the belt next year. They could win the. It could be like the GoDaddy server toss belt, right? That would be pretty funny. So how? Let me ask you this: how do you even? You're just sitting there with your friends, and you're like, "Why don't we rent this place for CloudFest next year?" And did you guys laugh about it? And you're like, what the fuck? I'll give them a call and see what they say. And did one of you guys just call them? And when you call in, were you like, "Hi, I'd like to rent the theme park for a weekend"? And they're like, "Oh, hold on a minute." And they just got you to the right person, or were they like, "We'll get back to you. We've never thought about that before"? Or is that a common thing that they do? How does that even happen? If I called, I live near Disney World, so if I called Disney and said I want to rent the Magic Kingdom for a weekend.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
We built ourselves a good reputation in that event industry. I mean, especially in Europe, it's considered by many people, the best business event in the world. From like various perspectives. For example, I was just the other day, I was in the airplane and in SAS, Scandinavian Airlines, flying to Stockholm or whatever. And I was reading the board magazine, and then I stumbled about CloudFest. Like, it was an article about the coolest conferences in Europe, like in Scandinavian Airline magazine, in the board magazine. So, I mean, it's a little bit like you say, we sit there and we get a crazy idea, and then it's like, okay, fuck, let's make that happen. Like what do we do to make this happen? I can give you 2 or 3 examples. I mean, I'm still super proud of it. In 2015, we were the first conference, CloudFest, who had Edward Snowden speaking. So, and for me, like getting him back, that was, it's called the Uncomfortable Podcast. That was really uncomfortable for me, to be honest, back then. I had to fly to Berlin. I met some lawyers. I had a lot of cash with me, and it was very weird, I didn't have any phone. I had to leave my phones in the hotel and so on. So that was a real adventure, but we made it happen. Or this year in March, we made a session about social engineering. I always wanted to do that, and it's a very interesting, field. So we had, what we did is we had a mentalist who was basically explaining how easily, with the audience, how easily the audience can be manipulated, either as a whole, as a group, or with certain people on stage. So up until he did this one fact to show how easy it is to get passwords through social engineering. He did this thing where he was basically guessing the name of a best friend of a person who was standing next to him on stage. It's no tricks. It's just mindset, and knowledge and so on. And after the session, showing how easy we all can be manipulated, we had this great panel. And one of our panelists was the head of cybercrime from the equivalent of the German FBI. and that is obviously something, which the audience really loves. It's not always the big name, the big speaker. It's the story behind it.
Yeah, I agree totally. And it doesn't have to be the world renowned known person. It's just somebody with a really interesting story. And some of the folks that I've talked to on here, hearing their story, I find a lot more intriguing than someone if I got, some famous actor or something like that, like who cares?
Yeah.
When I look at CloudFest though, and you said you had 8,700 people show up this year, is that a good year attendance wise? Is that the highest you've ever gotten for the show, or is it
Yeah,
gone down a little
that
bit?
was my
Really?
No,
I
sorry to interrupt
remember
you. This was. Mhm.
it was the biggest that you've had, the biggest highest attended show that you've had at CloudFest in Germany this year, right? Is that what you said?
Yes, it was the biggest one. 8,700 people this year. I think last year we were around 8,000 or so it was slightly more.
Cool. I mean, I remember right when Europe started to open up and we could come as long as we had our vaccination cards, and you would have to get your COVID test when you landed. And I remember that I actually wanted to go to CloudFest because I'm an investor in .link, and I was going to go and go with Vaughn to the conference and we were going to go to the to the theme park together, and I wanted to see it and learn more about hosting and all that. And I remember thinking to myself, I could land in Germany and then get stuck in quarantine for 2 weeks. But not only that, I could land in Germany, I could get on the train for 2 hours, get to the theme park, and then test positive when I get there, and then get stuck in the hotel there, maybe, or quarantined in some random ass place for 2 weeks, or get sick on the way home. And I was like, you know what? It's way too dicey. I was more worried not about my own health, just about getting trapped in a foreign country. So I was like, forget it. But then this year Rob went and he said it was an awesome show. And he said you guys did a great job with it, and he said he wants to go again next year. So maybe we'll make that happen. Now let's talk about so you have this massive conference in Germany, 8,700 people, but then you kind of have a satellite, or you had a satellite CloudFest conference. So you had its own CloudFest in the United States, but it hasn't grown as quickly or as popular in the United States, which I find surprising that it isn't at least a few thousand people that went to it. So how many years has that little separate American one been around for?
I think it's this year is only the second or the third year. I think it's only the second year
Okay,
this
so it's
year.
always just been it was always CloudFest in the United States was always with NamesCon, right? Oh, I thought it was its own separate one, but you
Yes,
just kind of
correct.
added CloudFest
Yeah,
onto it. Got it. Okay, and
correct.
so this year for NamesCon and CloudFest, how many attendees do you anticipate going to that?
Yes, we are on track to get 1,200 attendees to the
Uh-huh.
event, and it's
Uh-huh.
really more or less 50-50 split between NamesCon and CloudFest.
Got it. And then, like, for me I can see for like a domain broker or someone that owns like a domain marketplace, maybe people from the hosting business aren't really I mean, we're selling hosting.com, and if we had other hosting names to sell, meeting those people makes sense. But as a domain broker, hosting isn't really that important to us. But to a registrar, I'm sure there's a lot of overlap, right? And to someone that owns a GTLD or multiple GTLDs, they could get the hosting companies, because a hosting company a lot of times also has a registrar, so the GTLD managers would want to meet with them too, and some other suppliers are offering other technology. So I can certainly see how it makes sense. My question is, though, have you considered making name badges that are different colors? Like if you're from Domain Fest, to be like pink, and if you're from Cloud Fest, to be orange. Because I
Yes.
find that last year, for example, I was networking
Yeah.
and meeting people, when you're talking to someone, they're like, once you talk to them for a few minutes and they're like, oh, I'm in hosting. It's just like, like I gotta go. Like I only have so much time to meet people, but I don't, you know what I mean? You just know that it's kind of like oil and water in some cases, And I heard that feedback from some other folks that it was kind of tough for them because they would be spending time with the wrong people. Have you guys considered that?
Jeff, I will check that and I will take this recommendation home. I will talk to the team about that.
Okay.
That's a good one, definitely.
Okay. All right. And then I have some other questions though. Is this the last year it's going to be in Austin, or are you going to do it again there?
That's a good one.
You don't have to answer if you don't know
yet.
yet.
You can't really. Yeah, I mean, no, I'm very open and transparent. We don't know it yet, It's difficult to make everyone happy. Yes, we get some complaints, but on the other side is we clearly don't want to go back to Las Vegas because we think the event is too small. The whole ecosystem is too small. You will feel lost. Tropicana doesn't exist anymore anyway, luckily.
Yeah.
But I mean, we will. What I can tell you is, after the show, we will take a new approach, a new look, where it's going to be in 2025. We don't know it at this point.
Yeah, I think I really liked. I think if I had to choose between the two venues, if they're just hotels next to each other, as a conference venue itself, I think the Tropicana was pretty good because there was only really 3 places where people would gather. And so it always seemed busy.
Mm-hmm.
And being in Las Vegas, the other thing I liked about the Tropicana, the hotel obviously wasn't the best. But if you forget your badge in your hotel room at the Venetian, that's about a 45-minute walk back to your room. And if you're at the Venetian or you're at the Wynn or you're at MGM, right? These places are fucking massive. And so it's like, or you just want to go up to your room and send some emails for 20 minutes. That is an hour and a half commitment to walk back 20 minutes of emails and walk back to the show. That I don't like, and I think it's great in Austin that you want to go up to your room right in that hotel, zoom right up, do what you got to do, come right back down. I think it's good. I think the thing with Austin is that I don't like, and I know you can't, there's no perfect place, but the thing that I don't like as much about Austin is that everyone seems to gravitate in that coffee shop and it's packed, and then right kind of out front of it a bit. And then a lot of the people that have the booths to the right don't get the traffic as much as they should. And then you have a lot of people up. You have to walk up the stairs to go to those to where the speakers are, and it seems like there isn't as many people as they really are. Where when we were in Las Vegas, the booths were in that one big room, and then the speaking doors were open, and people would someone's finished talking, the people would empty into where the tables were, the booths were, and then people hung out in there, which gave it the appearance that there was always a lot of people, and it kind of, even it probably was less people than 1,000 people than you just said, or 1,200 people. It gave that appearance that there was more going on. I personally think, and I know nothing about the trade business, and I've actually asked the people that organize ICANN conferences this question, so don't think I'm picking just on you. Why not pick a place in the United States that has the most direct flights to it from all over the world, like Atlanta or Washington, Dallas, or Chicago, and make that the place? Don't you think? I'm sure there's like 20% are European or 30% are European that come to NamesCon in the United States. So, I mean, to be able to get a direct flight is more important necessarily than the city. Do you disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree. I think you're totally right. I mean, we kind of have a similar approach. And when looking in Austin, I think it was like only one place worth than Las Vegas for incoming flights. Yes,
Okay.
so a lot of people don't know that actually, but it's in the list. It's like Las Vegas is number 11 and Austin is 12, something like that, you know. So
Oh,
I was
wow.
also surprised. Also, when I heard the complaints, yeah, it's very difficult to get to Austin. I said, no, it has as many flights as Las Vegas. It's or almost as, you
Mhm.
know, but so it's not true.
Yeah.
But I get your argument, and you're right. It's like, but on the other side is you need to find a location, you know, where you can produce it also for the cost, you know, which caters basically the number of attendees and the money coming in from the partners. So we were
Oh, I agree.
looking into these. Yeah, we were looking. I mean, Washington, Dallas. I think back then I did a conference in 2005 for Parallels in Reston. Um, we have to look. I mean, we will take a new approach, but I got your argument. Totally makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I've said the same to ICANN, and ICANN is going to have uh, one of their conferences this year. I think is in not Somalia, but it's there's one in Africa. There's going to be
Rwanda.
one in Turkey. There's one Rwanda. And that's a challenge to get to. So I ask, and they say, well, we're one world, one internet, and we're supposed to have an ICANN at all these different places. But it's like, well, one world, one internet, we're supposed to have ICANN at all these places, but wouldn't it be a more successful show if it's in a much more accessible place? And they said, well, people from
Mm,
Rwanda would never be able to attend an ICANN if you think that way. And I said it would probably be better if someone from Rwanda wanted to go to the
mm,
conference, that you just flew them wherever it was, than having a whole conference there to
mm,
appease, to say we did it and check that box. Like, why wouldn't you pick 5 or 10 major airports around the globe that many more people can get a direct flight to? Like, imagine like Schiphol in Amsterdam. I've done a lot of flights in Frankfurt in Germany as a connecting flight many times.
mm,
London Heathrow. I mean, those are 3 major airports that anyone in Europe can get a direct flight to, right?
mm,
You have Hong
mm,
Kong, Tokyo, somewhere in Australia, I'm sure, and then you go L.A., Chicago, Atlanta, D.C. I'm not even saying Tampa.
mm.
Where I live. I'm not even bringing up Miami. I'm being quiet. It would be nice, but I don't. Again, it's not an easy airport. There's not as many flights. So I'm just just saying that. Anyways, um,
Mhm.
now my other question is, I was looking at your RDS conference that you do is in October. So that's similar to CloudFest. I think it looks like there's some parallel to RDS and CloudFest. Is that right?
Yeah, it's actually MSP. MSP Global is the name of the
Oh,
conference, and MSP stands
oh,
for Managed Service Providers. And
I don't know why I called it RDS. I'm sorry.
no worries, MSP Global, Managed Service Providers. The idea came over the last years. So, if you look at our original, or let's say the OG audience, which we have from cloud service providers, are the cloud service provider ecosystem is what was called web hosting. So
Hmm.
at CloudFest, we have all the cloud service providers, but over the year, like there was so much consolidation because either GoDaddy or Newfold or anyone else bought everyone. So if you have
Yeah.
consolidation, and if you have a lot of private equity in the game, you have less and less people. It's good in the beginning when private equity hits a certain industry, but if you come in the laggard phase, you have less and less people coming from your original audience because there's less and less companies, at the end phase of
Uh-huh.
consolidation. But still, our CloudFest was growing every year, and we were wondering, where do we get all these new people from? So this is two things. So we got them either these are internal IT departments like CTO, CIO from Fortune 1000s,
Hmm.
or managed service providers. And managed service providers is a non-consolidated industry. It's kind of there is consolidation in the US. In Europe, it's just starting right now. So UK and Netherlands are the forerunners in the consolidation of MSPs. But beside of that, it's still extremely fragmented. And fragmented markets are very good for conferences because more people are coming. And this is why we said, okay, I mean, there's so much potential because I think only in Germany there's 30,000 MSPs. I think in US it's like 200,000 or
Really?
something like that. It's like an incredible number. You know, the market is 10, 15 times bigger than our CloudFest industry and is at least 100 times bigger than the NamesCon industry. So MSP Global is a good new thing for us because also there are no there are a couple of MSP events and conferences, but no real good ones. So we come here in with our concept, what we have at CloudFest, and do that with MSP Global as a standalone event. This event is going to happen also in a theme park nearby Barcelona, 40 minutes from Barcelona, in October, second week of October.
So because it's at the end of second week of October, is that why you do NamesCon towards the end of June to kind of spread out the 3 shows based on bandwidth and just timing and everything? Is that really the main
Correct.
reason
now,
you're probably
yes.
within the May, June?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Because I think like in the United States, I've said to some folks too, talking about the conference in general, and I mean, you're a human, is that the end of June, the middle of May until the middle of June is tough because in the United States, that's when all like the kids are graduating high school, school is ending, and it's just a really busy time during the year, you know? And that's why I always liked it when you had the conference in January or February because well, 2 reasons. Is January for me it's a busy month, but it's busy for business month. It's not busy for family month. And then also what I like about it, which was important to me, January, February, is if I spoke to a registrar or a company, not like an individual domainer, but a company, I still have a chance to get in there that year's roadmap. Like if I spoke to someone in January, I still could potentially or hopefully get into 2024 and maybe even in the first quarter because they haven't decided what they want to do yet. But by the time I talk to somebody at the end of June or beginning of June, then that guy's going to go on vacation possibly for 2 or 3 weeks. And then that excitement or the fire of it is gone. Or he's like, yeah, let's do it. Oh, but my developers are gone in July. You know, I'm going on vacation in August. And then by the time they talk about it, it's like October, but 20 new things came up. And then you have to have that, you know, it's like it kind of loses that a little bit. And I think that, you know, that's why I like conferences in January, but that makes sense for you in the roadmap. And I mean, CloudFest is the bread and butter. That's the biggie. So you don't want to change that. And people probably have it marked on their calendars every year. So I'm sure you don't change the dates of that at all. Right. And then this MSP one is a relatively new conference, right? How many years old is that?
How
many
we
years?
only started last year. We had our inaugural event last year in November. So this is only our second edition this year.
Oh, wow. That's good. And what made you think, hell, let's add on another conference? You're like, you got the recipe for it. So you're like, what the hell? Let's do it.
Yes, I mean, it was a good time. We came back strong from after COVID, you know, after the pandemic. We are all grassroots, you know, there's no investment in the company, but we kind of structured some deals, you know, with partners and you know, we were able to get it out, you know, to make an amazing first MSP Global. We had, it was immediately 2 times bigger than, or 3 times bigger than NamesCon, you know, with 60 or
Just
I
like
think
that.
80 exhibitors. We had 1,500 people. So it was immediately big, you know, from day one. However, I mean, NamesCon is very important for us, you know, not misunderstanding that. And I like your feedback, what you're giving regarding the month of June. It's not an excuse. I just want to give some history to that. So after COVID, when we came back and then we were able to do the first physical NamesCon event again, we were looking at the timetable with the Omni Hotel. When can we do that? Basically, when can this happen? And like early June or end of May was the best they had. Because like once
Yeah.
after pandemic, everyone came back. All the big event companies. Who wanted to organize events, you weren't able to book anything, or to astronomical
Mhm.
prices, and and
Yeah.
so this is how it happened, that it changed from January to June. But I'm completely on your side. I think the event would be better in the last week of January again.
Yeah. And then, so let me ask you this question as a business owner, right? I own a small business. You're similar sizes as mine. And when I'm looking at obviously attending NamesCon, I've always felt like I've gotten a great value from it, right? I've never left saying I had a bad NamesCon. I've always left happy. I've always learned something new. I've met new people. I have new opportunities to make money, always. And and for those who don't know me, I met Soren when I was at Uniregistry, and Frank's strategy and his attitude was very hard and heavy on advertising. And so he paid Soren, I have no idea, I wasn't part of these conversations, but he paid Soren a lot of money. And like to the point that the Uniregistry logo was like with lights on the walls in Vegas, and they had like big letters that said Uniregistry, and it was just Uniregistry everything, which was great. And you guys did a great job with it. But as a small business owner like myself, where I'm trying to determine, should I just come this year? Should I bring somebody? So if I bring somebody, I got to pay for the ticket, flight, food, hotel. It's a few $1,000 investment to bring somebody to the show. Then myself, again, a few $1,000 investment. So let's say it's 5-6 grand all in when it's done. Do you think, like, and I debate this, like, do you think it makes sense and the kind of return that I would get as a small business owner if I were to pay to have saw.com on the wall when I walk in and I see my logo there? Do you think that that's going like the extra $2,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is? Like, how would I get that money back? What do you think that would do for me as a small business owner, and why should I buy it?
Okay. I mean, first of all, um, the when I compare the audience of CloudFest to NamesCon, at CloudFest we have only corporates, or mostly large
Yeah.
corporations. So, and they send their employees. So basically, I mean, everyone loves CloudFest, but it's the employee get paid by his company to go there. The difference is at
Mm-hmm.
NamesCon, it's guys like you who have a small team with 2 or 3 people, and you need to decide or think about, beside of me, who else should go from my team? It's a tough decision because you're a small business which you fund yourself. But for us as for
Yeah.
organizers, we see that. I would like just to make that clear. We see that the effort for someone coming to NamesCon is much, much higher than coming to CloudFest, because we talk about personal money. But why you should do that is the following. Where do you live right now? Tampa, you said.
Yes.
How many domainers do you have in Tampa area beside of Ron Jackson?
I would say I do business with 3 right now in Tampa, not including Ron Jackson. There's 3 in the
Okay.
area.
So you can meet them for a lunch, you can meet them for a coffee, if you like. But it's a very
Yeah.
limited group, and you all work from home or from WeWork or whatever. WeWork doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But you're working from home. Most of you guys are working from home. And NamesCon, it costs you money, but it's the only time of the year, beside of maybe an icon meeting, which is reachable from where you live, that you meet your peers. And I think especially for someone working from home and being basically alone more or less through the whole business year, this is one
Mhm.
of a few possibilities where you can meet your peers. And this only works for the physical conference. When people ask me, why don't you publish any recordings of the sessions, thereafter? I say, no, we don't do this. We want that people come physically to the events. They will be more happy. They can socialize. They learn. It's educational. They can go to the sessions if they want, but definitely they come home with business. So I encourage everyone, to make this decision and come.
I agree. And I do say it's a good show, like I said before. But what I guess I should have reworded it was, for a smaller business, like, how can I realize bigger returns from the show if I were to pay you for a sponsorship? Like, how does that work out? And how do your current people paying for sponsorships? I see, I guess what I'm trying to say is I see the same companies sponsoring NamesCon every year. Right, it's similar ones. Some drop out, but usually there's a core number of companies that are always advertising, whether they're large, and there's some that are smaller, like a domain broker or some of these bigger places or whatever. But they must be getting a good return. What kind of return, or what is the value that they are getting from that sponsorship? And me as a small business owner, if I was interested in paying for that, that's what's going through my mind. Not if I'm going to go or not. If I was going to pay that little extra to get more exposure or a booth or something, what would it be?
Yeah. I think for a registry or marketplace, it makes definitely 100% sense to exhibit. Okay, registrar, if domainers are my focus. Registry, let's take Identity Digital as an example. They have two interests. They have the interest to talk to the registrars which are on site and educate the domainers about the premium domains in their portfolio. So, and
Absolutely.
in addition to that, they sell to the CloudFest USA audience. So that is maybe the best example right now, like a company like that. But like if you're a marketplace registrar, it makes sense to exhibit. If you are a broker, to be honest, I'm not sure if it makes sense unless you have a certain mission, that you have, I don't know, want to hire people, or I don't know, you need to have a certain mission. But other than that, I think for domain brokers, I rather see you as the attendees, not as the exhibitors.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, see, what I think is that if I was going to give you I don't know what the prices are. I was going to give you $3,000 to get a booth and my logo on the website and on the piece of papers and whatever. I could give you that, or I could pay that $3,000 and have another person who works for me come, and we can go shake hands and kiss babies. Twice as many, and I would be able, with 1,000 people, be able to cover that place 10 times in the 4 or 5 days that I'm there with that person. And I think that in and of itself would be more valuable to me, but maybe I'm not seeing it. Maybe that's why I was asking. But yeah, I think that answer makes perfect sense. So here's one more screwball I'm going to throw at you. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing, we have, do you know Jack from China, dn.com?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he just sent me an email 5 minutes before we started the recording, and he will try out a booth this year. So, but I think it's one of the first times, that we have specifically a domain broker, getting a booth.
He must get out of my head. He's thinking exactly what I'm thinking, and it doesn't hurt to try. Especially if you do something different than everybody else. So going back before you kind of came on the scene, and I don't remember which conferences were which, and I'm milling it all together. But from conferences that I remember, we've had Don King, the boxing promoter, speak. We've had Biz from Twitter. We've had Kim Kardashian. You mentioned it before that you had the cybersecurity professional. We were actually at Uniregistry. We didn't end up hiring her, but we were this close to paying her. We were going to bring in this woman who is a professional negotiator. She's negotiated like hostage situations with terrorists, the PLO, just teaching the basics of negotiating, whether it's in person, email, phone. You talked about the master manipulator. When I look at, and including myself, because I'm on a panel this year, so this isn't to knock anybody in any way. I just see a lot of the same faces this year speaking than I have in previous years. And I think that a lot of the subjects are going to be similar. So would you consider, and I know like an Edward Snowden would be really expensive, but would you consider getting somebody of an interesting background that is different than what the normal thing is? And I know like Andrew Miller is a great negotiator. He's going to talk about his massive sale, and he deserves to have a panel, and people want to hear him talk, and that's totally fine. But I'd also like to hear or have somebody guess my password to my email in front of maybe not my email, but pass my password to something, or do something that is something really interesting to me and us as a community. And there's a handful of things I think would be cybersecurity is one, like you already mentioned, negotiating. I think, especially if there's like a written section of that. And I don't think a really good negotiator would be super expensive. Maybe someone who works at ChatGPT, but it's not Elon Musk. Maybe it's just somebody who knows a lot about AI. I think everyone who's going to that show is interested in that, or whatever. What are your thoughts about having like more of a speaker like that? I think it would attract more attendees, because it seems to me that I know a lot more people that go to the show to network, and they say, I don't even go to the sessions. And so what do you think about that?
If you look at the demographics of NamesCon, it's kind of 50-50. It's 50% newcomers who come for the first time, and 50% repeating. A question to you, Jeff. Something I ask once in a while. Like, how many people do you think are in the world who do domaining full time, either as a broker or a domainer, as their main core business?
Yeah. Their bread and butter, their livelihood, who can live from it. I would say it is less than 5,000.
Okay.
Maybe 8,000 people. That's probably what I would say, that can live off of it. Yeah. I'd probably go with that. If you told me how many brokers, in quotes, that GoDaddy has, that would help me with my number. But yeah.
Okay. No, but I was actually thinking it's less people. So my estimation was a little less. But in any way, what I'm trying to say is, when you look at the demographics, how do you make a program from the agenda which is catering both audiences? The new kids on the block, the new ones, and who doing that as a side hustle, which is the majority of people, of attendees we have, and then the ones who are doing it as a full-time living in one way or another. If you look at the ones who are doing it full-time, we have a lot of OGs, like I think more than in the last years. We have some of them who haven't came to conferences since 2019, before COVID, like Drew Rosner, for example, after 6 years now, 5 years. So I think from that perspective, it is, if you look at the program, which we're going to reveal next week, the agenda, there's a lot of content, obviously, for this 80%, for these newcomers, who the 101s, they need to learn, and they are happy to see you on a panel, or other people like Braden and Amar, people you had in your podcast before. So that is one thing. The other thing is how to get the superstars without paying too much money on them, and kind of make it part of your calculation. That's the difficult part. So for this year, since we put development of domains a little bit higher on the list, on the priority, we have Matt Mullenweg from the inventor of WordPress, who actually lives in Austin. So that's a very good fit when it comes to developing domains. Yeah. Then one
Yeah.
thing which we are announcing also this week is Windsurf, who's considered the godfather for internet. He's the one who invented the TCP/IP protocol.
No
And
way.
along with Steve Crocker, who made the ARPANET transition to the internet, he's considered the main person in inventing the internet. So, and then we have one more guest on Friday, the inventor of DNS, Paul Mockapetris. So this year it's 40 years DNS. And I think, like these internet heroes, the ones who wrote protocols or invented things which we use as a nowadays space, is something of what we learned as organizers is very important for our attendees. So our attendees love it more than any kind of celebrities we put on stage when we do surveys after the show. So so Paul Mockapetris, 40 years DNS, he's the guy why we all have a job or why we can sell domains. This will be an interesting conversation. It's a celebrity in our field, but it's not a celebrity from TV or social media or whatever.
And I prefer that. And I didn't realize you're having this. These are the exact kind of people that I'm going to go and listen to talk, right? And I can learn something from them, and I find them extremely interesting, and that's good. And I'm happy that you're doing that, because it just seemed to me in the last couple of years, I think it just seemed like a lot of the same stuff. But it's true. If you have a lot of rookies there, you have to have a lot of the same stuff, and it makes sense. And I actually also said to somebody else that it doesn't seem like, when I got in the business 14 years ago, a lot of the domain investors I met, which have grown into bigger, more successful domain investors, like one being Daniel Nagari, and he owns .xyz now, and he has a massive domain portfolio. He was probably in his mid-20s, and then Yanni, who's one of the other people on the show, again, early 20s. Merlin, early 20s. Like, there were a lot of these domain investors were in their early 20s, mid 20s, and they're still hanging around. They're still part of the industry, but I don't see many young faces in the domain business these days. And I see a lot more people like me with white hair. And you're a little whiter in the whiskers there, my friend, too, from the last time I saw you. And it seems like the average age is creeping at NamesCon, and I believe the week before or a few days before is a crypto conference in Austin as well. And I find it interesting. I'd find it interesting if you got a lot of people from the crypto conference to come to your conference for a couple days, if they want to do both. Like, I know Grant Shellhammer is going to go to the crypto conference, then he's going to go to your show. But I'm wondering if that's going to help attract people like the Consumer Electronics Show and whatever it was in Vegas. There was the Affiliate Summit, used to be that same time. But anyways, getting back to it, it just seems like the NamesCon crew, we're getting old. And I don't see a lot of new young blood in it. So, the rookies that are coming,
I agree.
do you think they're there in their 20s?
Let me answer this question a little bit differently.
Okay.
The inventor of DNS, Paul Mockapetris, he became a good friend over the last years. So he invented that 40 years ago. And he's saying that the changes to the original code which he wrote are so marginal, that it's more or less, it can be considered as something which was written 40 years ago. Nothing changed. So what can you expect from an industry where the standard, which we are using is not evolving, where basically the scheme, how domains are sold, is also 25 years old, from registry to registrar to maybe a reseller in between to end customer. So you have all these schemes which hasn't changed since decades. How do you expect coming young people into this legacy world, which is for them very boring? Like what is basically the latest cool stuff we heard in the domain industry? We talk a little bit about Web3 since 3 or 4 years. We have now fractional ownership. But beside of that, nothing really happened. We're still doing the same thing like 25 years ago. That is my personal opinion on that. But it's difficult, to bring crazy new innovation stuff to something which is so legacy. That is obviously something which we have to deal with as an organizer. We try to give new impulses, but we can't change the way the industry is set up. We can just give a neutral platform to discuss it, and hopefully there will be some changes at one point. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I see it.
I think my opinion. Yeah, I think my opinion on that though is, I feel like even if I was 20 years younger, looking at domains, and what the best part about domains is that if you own 1,000 domains, each of those is in essence a different company about a different subject, and you get to learn something new, and talking to buyers, talking to sellers, researching these names doesn't get old. And I think, like, you're a pretty resourceful guy. You were selling tours to Mauritius when you were young. So you picked tours because you saw an opportunity. If I can go into a GoDaddy auction and I can invest in some inventory for, hundreds of dollars and turn that into thousands, I can't imagine that any resourceful young guy wouldn't want to give that a shot and be able to do it on their own time, right? And be able to do other things with those domains while you're waiting to sell them. And it allows you to do different things. Now, comparing myself and what I do on a daily basis and who I get to talk to as a domain broker, and the circles of people that this business has opened me up to, I can see trends in technology. I can learn about new business ideas that are coming out. I learn about new service ideas. I was telling my friends and explaining what ChatGPT was to them ages ago, and half of them still don't even know what it is. And these are pretty savvy people. So, it's allowed me to stay on the forefront. I got into crypto very early, but I wouldn't have known that if I wasn't in this business. And then usually those that are in the domain business have their fingers in new things. You know what I mean? It just seems like it just keeps going. And so that's what I'm saying is, like, it seems like, I guess I would call domaining is almost like a gateway drug. Everyone says marijuana is a gateway drug and it opens you up to, get more drugs and do different things. Well, I think with domaining, it does, wholeheartedly. And I find it to be really interesting. But the person who used to do SEO for me told me it's a very boring subject and you're probably the only one who really likes it, So, I guess it's all in what you like. Some people sell watches, others sell domains. Other people rake leaves, But anyways, so do you have anything to anything else to tell us about NamesCon? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say I like the word gateway drug. I experienced it similar. Like, actually, I learned a lot from domainers, like things outside of the domain industry. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you with this here. Yeah. And I would like to add one more point regarding the new kids on the plot or the younger plot to get to the conference. So this year, I'm working very, very closely with Dennis from Domain Smoke on the agenda for this year's NamesCon. And Dennis is one of the younger persons, I think, in this domain industry, or for sure, and also one of the ones who just only entered a couple of years ago, but is very, very active with his newsletter of expired domain auctions, and I think like a very well reputation inside our small ecosystem and industry. And like specifically with Dennis, like on each panel, we set up currently, we ask ourselves how we bring more diversity to this panel. So first of all, diversity in matter of male and female, but also diversity in matter of, I saw Jeff already on 20 panels before versus bringing a new one on. Yeah. So this is something we really try, and we try to get the best out of it. But at the end, we can only give a neutral platform to make things better inside the industry. We can't change boringness, of let's say technology stack, or how things are sold because they're this done 25 years already like this. We can give impulses and we can give a neutral platform, but using it as a gateway drug to learn, I also totally agree with you. I mean, this crowd we have there is amazing. And after this conference, I have so many ideas in my head. I want to start like 3 companies right away, until you come down a little bit. But it's true. It's a lot of intelligent people we have in our small industry, and each one, in order to be a successful broker or domain investor, you need to look beyond, and you can clearly see that. And that's also one more argument to come. You meet peers which are looking beyond. They're not in their little cave, in the little cave in their whatever job they are doing, which might be boring. So it's amazing people, and you learn from them a lot. That's what I really like about that. I learn more at NamesCon than at CloudFest.
Well, you're too busy on the rides, but I think the thing is, I think what I also love about the domain industry as well is you talk about diversity. I personally don't care when people talk about diversity. The best thing that ever happened to me, or one of the best things that ever happened to me, was living abroad in the Cayman Islands. And when we lived there and building a sales team there was one point where we had somebody from Africa, we had someone from China, we had people from the Cayman Islands, we had people from England, we had people from obviously the United States, somebody from Mexico, we had somebody from New Zealand, somebody from Australia. We had all these Jamaica, people from Jamaica as well. I mean, India, we had someone from Goa, India that worked from us, and then another part of India. And to me, in the domain industry, it's like, there's a lot of Germans, but there's also others from China and wherever else. And that's the diversity I like. And hearing their points of view and their culture and their stories and the way they think is always a little different, than us as Americans think, and to me, you're right. I mean, there's diversity of the individuals, but the diversity of culture and the way that they are is really important. And before I entered this industry, I never did business with a German. I never did business with somebody from South Africa, and I love it. And I think that's great. And I think someday when I retire, I'll probably do like a trip around the world and go visit all my friends from the domain industry, because I know I'll have a place to sleep in pretty much almost every country around at least a flight away from each other. I can do a puddle hop to each place. So, and I think that's pretty cool too. But yeah, it's been good. And do you have anything else that you want to tell our listeners before we wrap this up, Soren?
Come to NamesCon, June 5th to 8th.
June 5th to 8th in Austin, Texas. All right. Well, Soren, how can people get a hold of you if they have any questions about the show? How would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. Please feel free to drop me an email at Soren, which is SOEREN @namescon.com. Soren, SOEREN @namescon.com.
All right.
And if you send me an
Thanks
email,
for being on.
I will give you a... Yeah. Okay. Hey, thank you. Thanks a lot. Jeff, sorry, I had some problems the whole time because your audio is like 3 or 4 seconds delayed, so I was never sure when you were finished with your sentence or not. So I hope it's working out.
It'll be fine. It's okay. It's not a big deal. But what we can do is, if you want, I can you're going to do a promo code or something like that. Or if you email them, I can put in the description. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, hopefully you can get some tickets out of it, or not. I can just put the link to where you can buy tickets in the description. Works too. So when we're done, send me an email with that, with the school info, and then any info for NamesCon that I can put in there, CloudFest, so people can sign up, and hopefully you can make some money.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, it would be great to sell some tickets, but it's looking not so bad right now. It will be full.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Oh, man. What time is it by you?
Okay.
It looks bright out.
6:30. 6:30 p.m.
2 in the afternoon.
Nah.
Nice. Very nice.
It's Barcelona. We never have bad weather, so same as you.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you, Soren. I hope you have a good day, and I can't wait to see you in Texas. All right?